The dare everyone in the hall stopped talking when the human walked in. He was not strong-looking, he was not tall. His clothes were plain, but his eyes were steady and his steps didn't shake. The alien sisters watched him with sharp, glowing eyes. They stood together at the end of the hall, tall, proud, and powerful. Each one had markings on her arms, proof of her many victories in battle. Their skin shimmered like polished stone, and their presence made most men turn away. But not him. The youngest of the sisters, Lyra, had invited the human. She said his name in front of the council. She defended him. No one understood why. The council had laughed. Her sisters had laughed louder. A human? You want him to compete? One of them said, crossing her arms. He will fall before he even takes one step. But Lyra had not changed her mind. Now, as he stood in front of them, she stepped forward. Her voice was quiet but firm. Tonight is the test. If he survives, he stays. If he fails, he goes. The human looked at her, confused but curious. He didn't know the full meaning of the test. He only knew that this was important to her. Her oldest sister, Vera, smiled in a cold way. He won't last an hour, she said. Humans break easily. The second sister, Zin, laughed. Let him try. It will be fun to watch. The human did not respond to their mocking. He didn't argue or explain himself. He only looked at Lyra again, and she gave a small nod. That was all he needed. Lyra led him through a stone passage into a room filled with old armor and weapons. Most of the gear was too big for him. She searched until she found something light and flexible. She helped him put it on without speaking much. Finally he asked, "What is this test? Why me?" She paused. Her eyes looked sad for a second. Then she said, "My sisters think you are too weak. They think humans are soft, but I've seen you. I've watched how you carry others when no one notices. You don't yell, you don't brag. You act. That's stronger than most warriors. No." He blinked. "But I'm not a fighter." "You don't have to be," she said. "Not tonight. You only need to endure. Stay on your feet, no matter what. And when the sun rises, they will see what I see." He didn't fully understand, but he agreed. He trusted her. When they returned to the hall, a large crowd had gathered. The sisters stood in the center. Vara raised her voice. "Let the dare begin. Let this human show us if he is more than just a soft body with soft words." Large door opened behind them. A path stretched far ahead, dark, uneven, and lined with sharp stones. The test was simple. Reach the end by sunrise. No help. No breaks. Pain was part of the challenge. If he fell and could not rise, he would be carried out in shame. If he reached the end, they would have to accept him. The human took his first step. The ground was hard and strange under his boots. The path twisted and rose like a wave. Shadows danced around him, and the wind cut through his armor like knives. But he kept going. The aliens watched from the sides, whispering to each other. Some laughed. Others looked curious. He tripped once. Blood ran from his hand. A stone cut into his leg. His breath became heavy. Still, he didn't stop. Time passed slowly. The stars above shifted. His back hurt. His feet burned. But every time he wanted to fall, he saw Lyra's face in his mind. Calm, waiting, believing. That gave him strength. Halfway through the path, his knees gave out. He dropped to the ground, gasping. Someone in the crowd shouted, "It's over!" But he did not stay down. He gritted his teeth, pressed his hands into the stones, and stood again. One step, then another, and another. Lyra didn't cheer. She didn't smile, but her eyes followed him the entire time. She didn't look away. When the first light of morning touched the far mountains, the human reached the end of the path. His legs were shaking, his body was broken in many places. But he was standing, barely but standing. The crowd fell silent. Vara looked at Zone. Zone looked at Lyra. No one said a word. The test had not been meant to be won. It had been meant to break him, and yet he was still there. Lyra walked to him. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "You made it," she said softly. He gave a small smile. "Now what?" She didn't answer. But deep inside, she knew this was just the beginning. Her sisters would not give up so easily. And tonight, He had only passed the first dare, asterisk what. Humans don't know can kill them. He had passed the dare, but nothing was over. The aliens did not smile or welcome him. They only stepped aside and let him walk back through the hall, wounded and tired. No one helped him, no one praised him, but everyone watched, eyes filled with questions, doubt, and something else, fear. Lyra walked behind him in silence. She didn't speak until they were alone again, far from the eyes of the others. You did well, she said quietly, but they will not accept you yet. He sat down, his legs weak. Why not? I passed the challenge. She looked at him for a moment. Because that was only a doorway. You entered their world, but now you must survive it. He didn't know what she meant, but he would soon understand. The next morning, Lyra's older sister, Vara, sent a message. One line only. He must face the House of Trials. Lyra's face turned pale. She explained to him, the House of Trials is not a place. It's a test of mind, a place where your thoughts betray you. Most who enter don't come out the same. He stared at her. And I have to go in? She nodded. They think. Your body was lucky, now they want to break your mind. No one prepared him for what came next. A silver mask was placed over his face. His arms were locked by a strange magnetic force. Lyra stood by his side, saying nothing but never looking. Away, then everything around him disappeared. He wasn't in the room anymore. He was somewhere else. He stood in the ruins of Earth. Buildings were in flames. The sky was black. He saw his family running and failing to escape. His old friends pointed at him and shouted, You left us. You saved yourself. He screamed that it wasn't true, but no one listened. Then Lyra appeared in the dream, but her eyes were empty. She turned away from him. You're not one of us, she said. You never were. Pain like a blade entered his chest. The visions kept changing. He saw versions of himself that were weak, broken, lost. He saw his hands covered in blood. He heard voices whisper, Give up, it doesn't matter. He fell to his knees, covering his ears. He wanted to scream. He wanted to disappear. But in the middle of that madness, he remembered one thing, Lyra's voice the night before. You don't have to fight. You only need to endure. He held on to that. He shouted back at the darkness, I'm not afraid of who I was. The vision stopped for a moment. He stood up, chest heaving, fists tight. You can't scare me with lies. I know who I am. The world around him cracked. The sky fell apart like glass. The floor vanished. Then he opened his eyes. He was back in the trial chamber. Lyra stood there, wide-eyed. A machine in the corner sparked and smoked. A small crowd. OF elders looked shocked. One of them whispered, It broke. He broke the chamber. No one had ever broken the House of Trials. The system was designed by the oldest minds of the galaxy, but it couldn't handle his mind, his truth. Vara? And Zahn stepped forward. They didn't mock him this time. They only stared. That machine has judged warriors from 100 worlds, Zahn said. It showed them fear and watched them fall. But he did not fall, Vara added slowly. He destroyed it instead. Lyra smiled, not with her lips, but with her eyes. Later that night, the human asked her, What did they see in there? What was the machine supposed to show me? She sat beside him and said, It finds your worst fear. The thing you hide deep inside. Then it makes you live it. And if you survive? He asked. Then it marks you as a warrior, she said. Even my sisters, even they were surprised. He looked at her carefully. And you? Were. You surprised? She gave a small laugh. No, I knew. I just needed them to see it too, but deep inside she was shaken. Not because he survived, but because the machine had never failed before. It meant his fear had limits, or maybe he had already faced his worst pain before ever coming here. And that scared even her. He didn't know it yet, but everything had changed. He was no longer just the human guest. He was now a challenge to their pride, a question they didn't know how to answer. And questions, in their world, always led to one thing, another test. The first 2 trials had shaken him, but what lay ahead would shake the very world he stood on. And soon, they would all learn something new about humans, what they fear. They fight and what they love, they protect with everything they have. The first trial pain of the body, he didn't ask for rest. Even though his muscles ached and his mind was still heavy from the trial, he stood when Lyra told him it was time again. This time, there would be no illusions, no tricks of the mind. This time, pain would be real sharp, deep, and constant. Lyra led him to a place called the Gauntlet Field. It was known among her people as the proving ground of true warriors. Every step in the field was a test. Every inch held traps that cut, burned, or struck the body. Warriors trained here for years before facing battle. But the human had one night. The sisters were already waiting. Vera, the eldest, had her arms crossed. "Let him try," she said with a cold smirk. "He made it through dreams. Let's see if his blood is as strong as his will." Zun said nothing. Her eyes watched the human carefully now. There was no laughter this time, only curiosity. No one had expected him to last this long. He looked at the field. It was wide and strange. Metal poles rose from the ground. Blades swung slowly from above. The floor was uneven and filled with hidden spikes. He felt his heart pounding, but his feet moved forward. Lyra walked beside him and spoke softly. "The goal is not to finish. The goal is to keep moving. The pain will try to stop you. Don't let it." He nodded. He didn't ask questions anymore. Then it began. The first part of the field was simple stone. But the moment he stepped on it, the ground shifted. A sharp edge cut into his foot through his boot. He winced but kept walking. A burst of heat came from a nearby pole. It didn't burn him, but it made his skin sting. As he moved forward, blades dropped in slow motion, just enough to scare him, not kill him. He ducked, rolled, and crawled. The pain started small, then grew. His hands were raw. His legs shook. He bled from his shoulder where a metal claw had grazed him. Still, he didn't stop. From a high platform, the sisters watched in silence. "He's bleeding already," Vara noted. "He won't last another 10 minutes. But Zun replied, "He doesn't fight like us. He doesn't use strength. He uses something else." The human reached a section with spinning wheels. Sharp thorns covered them. He had to climb across without falling. He slipped once. The thorns cut deep into his side. Blood soaked his armor. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward. Every breath felt like fire, but he didn't cry out. He never cried out. The crowd began to grow quiet. No one expected this. He had no training, no alien strength, no special body, yet he kept going. Lyra watched from below. Her fingers clenched. Every time he stumbled, her heart skipped. But he always stood back up, and that made her believe even more. After what felt like hours, he reached the final section, a straight path, but one filled with shifting glass beneath his feet. Each step could break the skin. He looked down, then stepped forward without hesitation. Blood followed his trail. His breathing was heavy. His eyes were full of pain, but he was still moving, and then he reached the end. He collapsed on the stone. His arms shook. Blood dripped from his hands, his knees, his chest. But he had done it. The field had not stopped him. The crowd stood in silence. Vara was the first to speak. He finished it. Her voice was unreadable. Zun looked at her. No one told him he had to finish. He chose to. Lyra ran to his side and knelt beside him. He was barely awake, but he opened his eyes. "I made it," he whispered. "You didn't have to," she replied. "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." Those words struck something deep inside her. It wasn't just pride or honor that pushed him. It was something else. Something her people rarely understood, loyalty without reason. Strength without pride. That night, the aliens whispered about the human who bled but never broke. The one who faced the pain of warriors and didn't fall. And far above, in the dark towers of judgment, the elders took notice. A human had crossed the field meant for killers. That was not just strange, it was dangerous. He had earned their attention, but not their respect. That would require one more thing, something even worse than pain. Something that broke even the proudest warriors. Doubt, the second trial mind. Against darkness, even pain couldn't stop him. That's what the sisters learned. His body had bled. His muscles had nearly given out. Yet the human stood tall the next day, bruised but not broken. But now the real danger was beginning. The body could heal, the mind, that was something else. Lyra didn't speak much that morning. She only looked at him with quiet eyes, half worry, half wonder. She knew what was coming next, and part of her feared it wouldn't be pain that would finally defeat him, but memories, doubt, guilt, things buried too deep for any blade to reach. The place was called the Hall of Echoes. It was silent when he entered. No cheers. No challenges. Just cold air and a long walk into a chamber made of black stone. The walls had no markings. The room had no doors once it closed behind him. Only silence, and then the voices began. Not alien voices, human voices. He heard his father, years gone, disappointed. You're not enough. You never were. His mother's voice cracked with sadness. Why did you leave us? His own voice echoed last. Why are you even here? He dropped to his knees. His chest tightened. This wasn't some test built to scare him. It was his own mind turned against him. Regret hit him harder than any blade. Faces appeared on the walls, people he had failed, people he had lost, people he thought he had forgotten. Coward, a voice whispered. Pretender, another growled. Lyra doesn't want you. She pities you. He screamed, but there was no sound. He punched the floor, but it didn't hurt. It was like being trapped inside himself. He didn't know how long he stayed there. Time didn't move in the Hall of Echoes. Outside, Lyra stood with her sisters. How long will he last? Vara asked. His kind are weak inside, Zun replied. One memory can break them. Lyra didn't answer. Her heart was heavy. She knew he was strong. But this trial was cruel. It didn't care how brave you were. It showed you your worst self and forced you to listen. Inside the chamber, the human curled against the wall. His breathing slowed. He felt cold not from the room, but from something inside. His will was fading. The weight of everything he had failed to do in life sat on his chest. But then he heard a new voice, not a memory. A whisper, real. You are still here, it said. Why? It wasn't mocking. It was curious. He sat up. His vision was blurry. Because someone believes in me. The silence didn't respond. He stood slowly. Because even if I fail, I want to try. Because I'm tired of running. The shadows pulled back. The voices stopped. And then, for the first time in the Hall of Echoes' long history, a light turned on. Outside, a sound echoed like thunder. The doors opened. And the human walked out, sweat soaking his body, eyes calm but full of fire. Everyone was stunned. Even the elders who watched from high towers did not speak. The Hall of Echoes was known to break champions. It never let anyone return the same. And no one had ever silenced it. But Vedi had vowed. You saw yourself, she said, and still came out whole? He looked her in the eyes. I didn't come out whole, but I came out honest. Zun tilted her head. What did you see? He paused. Everything. I hated about myself, everything I tried to forget. And how did you win? I didn't, he said. I just stopped hiding. I didn't laugh this time. That night, as the stars returned to the sky, the whispers across the fortress changed, no longer mocking. No longer filled with doubt. Now they were afraid. Not because he was powerful. Not because he had weapons. But because he had nothing left to hide. And a man with nothing left to hide could not be controlled. He was not their toy, not their test. He was becoming something else. A threat. The truth behind the challenge. The crowd saw his strength. The sisters saw his will. The elders saw a problem. But the human saw only one thing, Lyra. Every trial, every wound, every doubt. He had faced it all with her face in his memory. He didn't know why. He just knew it gave him strength. That night he didn't sleep. Not because of pain, but because of questions. Why was he really here? Why had Lyra chosen him? She found him sitting alone near the edge of the high towers. The stars above were unfamiliar, but he had stopped missing Earth. Something in him had changed. He was no longer just a visitor. He turned when she stepped near. Tell me the truth, Lyra. Why me? She sat beside him, quiet at first. Then she spoke, her voice soft but clear. Do you know what happens to my kind when we reach age of bonding? He shook his head. We are chosen by our clan leaders, given to warriors of equal status. Matches made for power, not for love. My sisters accepted this. They chose fighters, hunters, champions. She paused. I refused. He watched her, silent. I saw them bow to strength, she continued, but I wanted to bow to character. I didn't care about size or scars, I cared about choice. I wanted to choose someone who saw me, not my family, not my title. He understood now. You chose me to challenge them, he said. No, she whispered. I chose you because when I was injured and ignored, you were the only one who stayed beside me without asking for anything. He remembered it now. A long time ago on a border world, he had found her wounded and silent in a broken ship. She hadn't looked like royalty, then just tired and scared. He had carried her to safety, given her water, and left without asking her name. That one moment had changed everything. But I didn't know who you were, he said. That's why. I trusted you. Before he could speak again, a loud blast shook the walls. The sky lit up red. Sirens screamed across the towers. Lyra's face turned pale. They came early. Who? He asked Dot. She stood up quickly. My clan's rivals, another royal family. They were promised my hand if I failed to bond with strength. He stood beside her. You mean they're here to take you? She nodded. They were waiting for me to give up. Now they think I have. He looked at her with fire in his eyes. Then let's show them you haven't. Outside, warships landed. Warriors in dark armor poured out, shouting in a language he didn't understand, but he didn't need to understand it. He could feel the meaning in their steps. They had come to claim her like a prize. Vara and Zun stood ready with weapons. But even they looked unsure. Their people had not expected a real war-only political threats, but this was different. This was force. Lyra turned to the human. You don't have to fight. This is not your battle. He stepped closer to her. It is now. She looked into his eyes, and something in her heart, something she didn't even know she had been guarding, broke open, not in fear, in hope. The alien warriors marched forward. Their leader shouted, We come for the unclaimed. The bondless princess belongs to us. Lyra stepped back, but the human stepped forward. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. She chose me. And I'm still standing, the rival warriors laughed. One of them raised a weapon. But before they could strike, Vara and Zun blocked their path. She is our blood, Vara said. She makes her choice, and we will defend it. In that moment, everything shifted. It wasn't about tests anymore. It wasn't about proving strength. It was about one woman's right to choose and one human's courage to stand beside her when no one else would. The war had begun. And, this time, the challenge wasn't just survival. It was freedom. The blood of a human, the heart of a warrior. Smoke rose into the alien sky. Fires lit the stone walls. Alarms wailed through every tower of the fortress. What had started as a quiet challenge had now become a full invasion. But in the middle of that chaos, the human stood his ground, bloody, bruised, but unshaken. The rival clan had not expected resistance. They had expected silence, fear, surrender. They didn't come to fight. They came to take. Lyra was the prize they believed belonged to them, but she was no longer silent. And the man she had chosen was no longer weak. The alien warriors in black armor surrounded the front gates, blasters in hand. Their leader, taller than all, shouted again, Give her to us, or we take her from your ashes. Vara, once cold and proud, now stood with her blades drawn. Zun, silent but sharp, stood beside her. The sisters had changed. They had seen something in the human that even they couldn't deny anymore, but the human did not stand behind them. He stood in front. No shield. No advanced weapon. Just a spear he had pulled from the wall and a heart that refused to back down. I won't let you take her, he said. The alien warriors laughed. You think one human can stop us? He didn't answer. He attacked. It wasn't perfect. He had no formal training, but he moved with fury and instinct. He dodged a strike, countered with a stab. Another attacker came at him. He ducked, rolled, and hit low. Every move cost him pain, but he didn't stop. He didn't think about fear or pain or death. He only thought about Lara. Behind him, the sisters joined the fight. Blades clashed. The ground shook. Screams echoed. Lyra wanted to run to him, but Zun held her back. He must do this, Zun said. This is the moment the clans will remember. The human was knocked to the ground. A foot came down on his chest. A blade raised to end him, but he didn't close his eyes. He spit blood and growled, "I'm not done yet." And with a final burst of will, he kicked the attacker off and stood again. He roared like a beast. Not because he was the strongest, because he refused to break. The warriors began to retreat. One by one, they stepped back, unsure now. This was not the weak human they expected. This was something else. Their leader growled in rage and charged, aiming to finish him, but before the blow could land, Lyra stepped between them. Her eyes glowed with power. She screamed one word. "Enough!" Energy burst from her voice. The force knocked even her sisters back. The rival warriors froze. Their leader dropped to his knees, gasping. In that moment, everyone remembered something they had forgotten. Lyra was not just a princess, she was power. She turned to the human and reached out her hand. "This battle is over," she said. "Because what I choose I defend." He took her hand and stood beside her, shaking but alive. The rival clan had no choice. They fled, beaten by something they could not understand. Not weapons, not numbers, but unity. Lyra and the human stood at the edge of the fortress as silence fell. Vera stepped forward slowly. "You were never supposed to make it this far," Zun nodded. "You were supposed to break?" The human looked at them, his voice tired but strong. "Then maybe you should stop testing hearts with war?" For once, neither sister had a reply. The man who entered their world as a joke now stood in their legends, not because he conquered anyone, but because he protected someone, and in their world, that kind of warrior was rare. He had bled with them, fought with them, stood beside them, and no, he had earned something no test could give. Respect. He's ours now, all of ours. The sun rose over the smoking sky, casting golden light on broken stone and battered warriors. Silence covered the battlefield like a heavy blanket. The fight was over, but something bigger had taken its place. A change, a shift, a new beginning. The human stood near the edge of the fortress, clothes torn, skin marked with bruises and blood. But he was standing. That alone was enough to make even the elders stop and watch from their distant towers. Because in their long history, they had never seen anything like this, not from an outsider, and never from a human. Lyra stood beside him, her hand wrapped gently around his wrist. She didn't speak, she didn't need to. Everyone had seen it, the way he fought, the way he endured, the way he stood, not just for her but with her. The fortress gates slowly opened. The people, the guards, the warriors all came forward in silence. The human expected more judgment, more tests. But instead they bowed their heads one by one, not in fear, not in shame. In respect. Vera stepped forward, her tone calmer than ever before. "You came here uninvited, unwanted, unbelieved, and yet you remain," Zun added. "You didn't take power, you earned it. With pain, with truth, with love." He looked at them, unsure. "So, what happens now?" Lyra squeezed his hand and stepped forward. "You are no longer an outsider. You are part of us now." But Vera interrupted with something more surprising. "No," she said. "He's not just part of you, Lyra. He's part of us. He belongs to all of us now." A quiet hum moved through the crowd. Agreement. The alien people had never accepted a human before, never welcomed one into their ancient traditions, their sacred bonds, but this one had changed that. Lyra turned to him, her eyes soft but steady. "I chose you to prove a point. But somewhere in all this, I forgot something important." He blinked. "What's that?" She stepped closer. "I didn't choose you because I needed to prove them wrong. I chose you because I wanted you." His breath caught. She reached up, touched his face, and smiled. You didn't have to be the strongest. You only had to be real, and you were every moment. He was silent. For once, words felt small. But his hand tightened around hers. Then Vara raised her arm and declared before all, "Let the record show the human has passed every trial, body, mind, war, heart." Zun nodded. "Let him be marked in the scrolls of honor. From this day forward, he is one of the chosen." The people cheered not loudly, but deeply. A sound of acceptance that echoed through every wall of the fortress. Lyra leaned in and whispered, "They thought you were too weak. Now they see your strength wasn't in your body. It was in your heart," he smiled, "and yours was in your choice." Together they stood at the edge of the clan's world, no longer test and tester, no longer human and alien, but two souls who had broken ancient rules and built something new, a new bond, a new story, one that would be told for generations, not of conquest, but of connection, not of power, but of choice. And when young ones asked how a human came to stand beside a warrior princess, the answer would always begin the same, because her sisters said he was too weak, and he proved them all wrong.